Ed King made the most interesting observation I've heard today, which is that the future of this business is entertainment. And if you recall on the predictions panel earlier with Contessa Brewer, entertainment came up time and time again. So it's perfect that our platinum sponsor, Play & Go, is going to have a panel now on entertainment in the business. And I'd like to introduce the moderator, Anna Fältström, who is the regional marketing lead for the US.
Thank you so much, and welcome to our Play & Go panel. You all look really good with those lanyards. Love to see that around here. My name is Anna Fältström. I am the regional marketing lead for Play & Go in the US. And with me today, I have Shawn Fluharty, head of government affairs at Play & Go, and Magnus Olsson, chief commercial officer at Play & Go. And today we're here to talk about resetting the message and driving more towards entertainment for long-term wins. So, Magnus, I'd like to start with you.
Yes.
This year is Play & Go's 20th anniversary. What do you think has made Play & Go so successful in the past 20 years? And what do the next 20 years look like?
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, I know, 20 years, it's amazing. Next year we'll be allowed to gamble.
Oh.
And drink.
In New Jersey, at least. So anyway, I think it ties into the topic of the panel that for 20 years, Play & Go has been a company striving to provide, the vision has been, or still is, to be the best entertainment gaming company in the world. Our values around quality, energy, and trust. I think you combine that and you have a leadership team that drives that relentlessly, constantly, combined with the notion that regulation is the future. So you put all those pieces together, you execute relentlessly on that for 20 years, and I think we set us up for 20 more good years.
I think that sounds like a really good idea. Shawn, if we look at it from a wider perspective, what do the next 20 years look like for the industry in the US?
Well, as Magnus touched on, Play & Go's philosophy here is a sustainable model. And an entertainment model is one that puts people first. And we believe that if you are in this industry and individuals that are participating, we should not be profiting at the expense of those individuals. We should be working together in unison to put a sustainable model forward. But I think everybody in this room, on what the next 20 years looks like for the industry as a whole, if we were sitting here when the past was overturned, sports betting took off, and we sat here in 2025, we'd say, we'd be celebrating so many states opening up, but that hasn't happened. So next 20 years needs to be a shift in this industry. We have a public problem and a policymaker problem. And what do I mean by that? The public is not on board in asking for iGaming like they were with sports betting. Policymakers are not on board in asking for it because in large part, they don't know what it is. We need to message better as an industry to the public and to the policymakers, because I'll go back to how the states have got this done to begin with. Public drives policymakers. Policymakers care about remaining in office and passing laws that they believe will keep them there. And we as an industry need to come in with unity and not be fractured. And I think if you look around the country right now and bills that are moving through legislative progress, there's a lot of fracture right now in the industry. And that does not work when states, one by one, according to 2024 data that we have, each state introduces roughly 1,600 bills per legislative session. So we are just one of 1,600 bills. Lawmakers, how do we stand out to them? How do we get their attention? And if we come into a lawmaker's office and the industry itself is in different directions, good luck getting a bill across the finish line. And that's where unity comes into play. That's where the entertainment model comes into play, because that's a sustainable model for success going forward.
Thank you, Shawn. Magnus, in the past, you've talked a lot about how Play & Go embraces regulation. What has that looked like for us in the US so far?
For the US and for the regulation and what we expect and what we want to see, I think you have to have regulation that drives in the right direction and that adds value. And like you talked about, that we have this unity. I think for the regulation going forward in the US, we have to see, you have to solve the right problems. You have to work on, if you can ring fence the age, you don't have to work on the content and restrict that, for example. So work on the right problems, work on the right issues, and let's do it together. Let's have that unity that Shawn talked about, that we work together to create a healthy, functional regulation that we then can multiply out and also learn. We talked in another panel an hour ago, learning from others, learning the good stuff and also learning the mistakes that others have done and bringing that into the mix. I think that's super critical. So I'm very optimistic about this. I think what the signs I see are good. It's going too slow, but we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree with you, Magnus. It's clearly important from a supplier perspective. What about from a policy perspective, Shawn?
Regulators are essentially partners in all of this. And I think it's great, this conference right now, we have regulators throughout the country here. Years ago, you would only have a Northeast influence, and we just left a panel that Magnus was on a few minutes ago, and we have Louisiana regulators here. And Louisiana is not an iGaming state, but they're taking the steps to become one, and they're doing their homework, and they're working with lawmakers to get that done. Any state where just policymakers are moving legislation forward and not incorporating regulators in this team effort, they're not going to be successful. I can speak from experience. When we passed legislation in West Virginia, our regulatory body, West Virginia Lottery, was with us from the very beginning. And I think the industry has to work with regulators at the onset and not just wait to push through legislation and then say, here you go, regulators. It's on your table now. No, you have to work with them from the very beginning, build those partnerships, and that will create the sustainable model going forward.
Thank you, Shawn. And do you think the industry in general is too focused on short-term wins rather than the long-term narrative building? And if so, how can we overcome that?
Well, I'll grab this real quick. Yeah. So,
No.
these short-term wins, I think everybody had a philosophy that iGaming would become sports betting 2.0, that everybody would jump on board and that we would just take off like a rocket ship. It's not happening. No. And we can be our own enemy sometimes, and there has to be a reflection point in the industry, and that's something that every company has their own approach on how they do things. We do it play and go, and our games may not look like yours, but at the end of the day, a rising tide raises all ships. But the industry hasn't really done that. The industry has said, we're going to come in like a wrecking ball, be sports betting 2.0, have our own philosophies, and now you've seen the result of that, which is a message that is fractured through different companies, whether it's the operator or supplier side, and there's no unison in that message. And I'm telling you, that's not going to get you across the finish line. And so the short-term goal of coming in and believing we're going to have this sports betting 2.0, it's not happening when you have a fractured message.
There is an element of, you see, and you have seen decisions being made that are really good in a 3-month perspective, yep, and really, really bad in a 3-year, 5-year perspective. And having that stamina and that will and that kind of guiding star, this is the direction. We will have to leave some money on the table now to build that sustainability. And the sustainability has to be on player level, yeah, retain the players, and make them return and feel good about returning, and doing that in a framework that functions. And it also has to be sustainability on a corporate level. Yep. How do we build corporations that are sustainable over 20, 40, 60 years? And you don't do that by quick wins or trying to circumvent regulation or challenging regulation. You do that by playing with and playing together.
Thank you, Magnus. And we are at Play and Go talking a lot about how entertainment is the future and how we need to drive the messaging more towards an entertainment-focused narrative. But what role, Magnus, does companies like Play and Go actually play in driving this change in narrative messaging?
So the obvious is to create content that is truly entertaining. And if you think about it, like you walk into a shop and you spend money, you walk out, you need to feel good about the product you just bought in that shop. Same thing with playing a game. You place your bets, you spin the reels, you keep doing that for a while, you stop and you leave. Was that a good investment in entertainment or not? Do you feel good about leaving that? So content quality content that's entertaining, that's definitely high on the agenda. We can do more. And for example, we can work on the business models today. Today, a typical business model is that we charge on GGR or NGR, a percentage. And GGR is basically bets minus wins, which is a nice way to say that's the money people lost. We could instead charge by rounds played, by activity. That would disconnect us from the actual winning-losing side and create an environment where we benefit from people spinning the reels and having fun and being entertained. And that would move us away from RTP discussions or bet sizes or bonus buys or whatever instruments there are out there to maximize bets, i.e. maximize losses, which we don't want. No. We want people to play and enjoy it and not necessarily empty wallets.
No. We want people to have fun and enjoy their experience.
So I think that's a role we can play. We can challenge the current business models and present new ones. And I would go into a conversation with any operator, new or old, that is willing to look at that from their side, because I think there's something there to explore. And then we have to continue on the content. And we have to be, all of us has to create content that is truly, truly entertaining, that can compete with Netflix, if you like.
Thank you, Magnus. And Shawn, if you could challenge one prevailing industry narrative today, what would it be and why? I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but I'll let you dive into it.
Well, I think the hot topic that you see in the industry and the reports of the media is this cannibalization issue. And look, David Rebuck was here somewhere. He's the master. He's the godfather of regulation in this country. And he'll tell you he has years of experience in New Jersey. It tells you that's a falsehood. Other states, an example. The state of Pennsylvania passed iGaming. What have they done since then? They've built 4 brick-and-mortar casinos. So the idea that iGaming is somehow cannibalizing brick-and-mortar casinos is one that turns into a good talking point, but it dies on facts and evidence. And that is something that's holding us back. Again, if we are going to succeed as not just as a company of Play and Go, as an industry as a whole, we have to realize that there are partnerships that exist between the brick and mortar and iGaming, and there's model legislation out there that you can follow that has been successful in other states like New Jersey, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, that proves that the rising tide does indeed raise all ships. And that is something that I think we need to focus as an industry on, because it goes right back to that. If I'm back here next year and we're still talking cannibalization, we're going to be saying how no state opened up because you're not getting it done. We have to realize the partnerships exist within this industry and capitalize on those partnerships and not fall into the false narratives that we've been seeing now with the coverage of why we're not moving forward.
It is strange, though, Shawn. Strange is when you look at the different states in the US and also to certain countries in Europe, we are the only industry I can think of where we actually raise our hands and say to the politicians, please tax us, please regulate us. Who does that?
Nobody.
No.
Nobody. At the highest degree.
And we do it because we believe in that, because that creates sustainability, and that enables us to build not only companies, but also an industry that will survive, but also survive in a way that we in 20 years' time continues to feel pride, happiness, and a sense of achievement when waking up in the morning and go to work. And that's what we feel today, and we need to feel that in 20 years. So how do we build that industry? Well, we have to do it like that.
And you've been a leader, and Play and Go has, of doing a great job of policing yourself. And you mentioned direct bonus buys and how we do not participate in that. But that's not by a regulatory decision. No. That's through an internal decision as a company. And what we will find is that we talked about short-term goals and things. If you're pursuing the profit to the highest degree at the shortest time, what's going to happen is, as we reflect back on legislation that gets passed and gets implemented, is that there will be a correction. And that correction is going to come with a heavy regulatory hand if we can't keep things in order in our own house. And that's what you don't want, because either you're at the table and you're bargaining, or you're on top of it getting chopped up. That's how things usually work.
What Pierre talked about this morning about the big chunk of black traffic in the US, I haven't read that report yet, but from Blask, but I certainly will. I think address that. Let's address that, and let's work together. And let's just wait and say it's a regulatory problem. There's stuff we can do. And again, it goes back to building a sustainable industry that we are proud of tomorrow and 10 years from now. I think that must be the guiding star.
Thank you both. And to wrap up, if we look ahead a bit, what is one major change the two of you would like to see in how the industry communicates its value over the next 5 years to drive the iGaming expansion?
I would say I would go back to the business model. That I would be open to discuss that, or any other things we can do together in the ecosystem that we have to create that sustainable future. I also think that regulation that focus on solving the real problems, the black market traffic that Pierre talked about, and ring fencing. If you have an age control that works, you don't have to age control the content within that, because that only takes away unnecessary time, effort, money from everybody. Things like that, regulation that solves the real problems, and working together with operator suppliers to create that environment. There's some really good examples out there, and we see good signs. But I think creating that environment together, I think that's super important. But if there's one thing Play and Go or any other supplier can do, I would say it's on the business model.
Yep, interesting.
And I would add to that, the industry needs to have core messaging to help close the education gap from the public and policymakers. That's the number one issue. We recently were testifying in Maryland, and I was able to show that the black market's alive and well. I could play on my phone while sitting in a committee room with legislators at the Capitol, yet they're not deriving any tax revenue, they're not protecting any consumers. That's going on in every single state in this country, yet the public doesn't really realize that, and if they're playing, they're likely playing in the black market. They think it's even legal. And policymakers don't realize that. I had questions. Are you using a VPN right now? How could you possibly do this? I'm on Verizon. Like, this is not complicated. But it's complicated to lawmakers because they don't have that messaging from the industry to them to close the education gap and then formulate good policy. And so that, as a whole, the industry needs to get on the same page in the messaging. When a bill does not make completion through the legislative session, and we read in the press, oh, iGaming bill dies. No, it's more than that. States are not funding vital resources available. The budget deficits in states don't shrink by leaving iGaming on the sidelines. You need iGaming to pass to close those budget gaps that are coming forward in many states. And you're not protecting the consumer as your duty as a lawmaker, your constituents. You're not protecting them by leaving iGaming legislation on the sideline. You're actually allowing them to participate in a market with no protection. So this messaging needs to be straightforward to the public and lawmakers on the same page with the industry in order for that education gap to start closing.
Thank you. Thank you both. And thank you everyone for joining the Play and Go panel today. We look forward to see you all around with the lanyards, and have a great rest of your conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.